You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV.
Sovereign silhouette, the emblem of Ambazonia. From the azure embrace of the Atlantic reflecting from the Amber's Bay, the iconic Fako mountain ascends with a silent, stoic grace, carving a silhouette against the sky. This towering sentinel is more than a geographical marvel. It is the heart of southern Cameroons, the stoic guardian of Ambazonia, a symbol steadfast as the unyielding spirit manifests in the unity of the land's 13th counties. Encircling this earthen spire, a dove of peace edges its arc, untouched and serene. As it soars with wings unfurled, it casts shadows upon the land, each feather a brushstroke of tranquility. Against the canvas of the heavens, 13 stars glimmer, the celestial acknowledgement of each county's shared dreams and harmonious virtues. The dove, in its eternal flight, is not merely a bird, but an embodiment of the collective longing for a peaceful existence under a shared identity. Beneath the mountain top, firmly grounded in the richness of the earth, twin elephant tusks rise as natural monuments. Their arcs, regal and commanding, capture the noble essence of the land's spirit animals. This emblem, this seal of Ambazonia, is no mere insignia. It is the beacon that illuminates the path to shared prosperity. It is an oasis of unity in a world patched by discord, a visual whisper of a nation's promise, echoing across generations. Every curve, every symbol within the emblem tells the story of Southern Cameroons, an epic scripted by the enduring strength and unity of its communities. Each page imbued with the hopes and enduring spirit of its people. Sovereign silhouette, the emblem of Ambazonia.
Good evening, fellow Ambazonians, particularly to those at home front. Good evening to those in Europe. Good morning, afternoon to those in the North America, and greetings to the rest of you across the world who are joining us on the horizon, the voice of the Ambazonia woman. Today, we will be talking about chiefs and fonds. We have lived in a society in Ambazonia where the role of traditional leaders called chiefs or fonds have been so important in our societal values and societal construct. So today we will look into how the roles and their impact and the functions of this office in our territory in Ambazonia have evolved over time. And joining me to throw light and education on this subject matter today is no other but Dr. Lobati. So while I wait on Dr. Lobati to join us, I would also like to salute all, especially our restoration fighters who have kept it together, who have stayed the course, who have kept their faith, their hope for a free homeland alive. I will also I want to take the opportunity to thank all fellow Ambazonians across the world who are doing all that they could to see that our freedom is assured. And and in this moment, I would also add that there have been so many incidents and happenings of distraction, of things that may take away your hope of freedom for a free homeland. But we on the horizon, the voice of the Amazonian women, we are staying the course. We are staying the course because before we began this journey, we know and we knew that Ambazonia is certainly free, and we are just fighting to establish that reality. Um, I would like the technicians to please bring Dr. Lobati on as we continue the program.
Okay,
Thank
I
you,
hope
Dr.
you can.
Lobati.
Yes,
You're welcome.
I'm very happy to be able to participate in this program with you one more time. I hope you can hear me well. Can you hear me?
Yes, excellently.
Wonderful. So I'm very happy to be with you again in one of our programs. We're very happy to share with our people. This is really a very important topic. What has happened to the leadership of our traditional authorities, and what is going to be the future for our people, seeing the way that they are functioning and the way they are being manipulated today. We want to explore that.
Thank you. And I like the way you phrase it, the leadership of our traditional authority. That really puts their functions in a very simple perspective to understand. And just I would just like us to dive straight into the subject matter for the day. And we've grew up and we've had a society where traditional rulers, traditional leaders have existed um, for the big from the beginning of our communities and society. And within Ambazonia, what is the history of the chiefs and fonds within Ambazonian as a nation?
Okay, so let me go back and bring some information about things that are clearly standard. They can never be changed. Human beings were created by God. Even atheists, they know that in every society you have people, and these individuals are the reason why you have leaders. So human beings were created by God. And when you have a lot of people, you need leaders. If you don't have a leader, there will be confusion. If you have a family without a head, there will be trouble in that family. So leaders have always been. The critical question is whether you have good leadership or bad leadership. In the situation in Ambazonia or Africa, as we were talking, our forefathers, they have migrated from place to place. You can read in history about the Bantu migration, which started around where you have Ambazonia and Nigeria and traveled all across to the east and west of Africa down into Congo. But also, you had other migrations around the big rivers. You had the Niger River, you had the Nile River, which goes from the Lake Victoria around Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, all through the land of Sudan to Egypt. And then you have other rivers around the Congo River. But if you read the story and the history of our current settlements within the land of Ambazonia and in the grasslands like the Bamileke land, what they tell you is that their forefathers migrated from the land of Egypt. What they mean is not the geographic land of Egypt, but basically the people who were settled around the Nile River that I just described. So they wandered westward, and then they ended up where we are. And if you look at the relief futures, the geographic land futures of Africa, the continent, you realize that there is a mountain range from the Atlantic Ocean that goes across Ambazonia, including the popular mountain, the Cope Manenguba Mountains, coming through the mountainous areas of Lobialem, Momo, and then you come to Mezam, Ngoketunjia, and it goes right through to Adamawa. They call it the Adamawa Mountain Range. And if you look, you realize that when our people were walking, there were no roads, there was no aeroplanes. So they were walking on foot. And among them, you had the young and the old, frail people. So basically, the physical features determined how far they could go. And basically, as they were walking through the African plains and mountains and grasslands, they had all these different animals as well as fertile areas. And so the groups of people that were traveling were looking for fertile plains where they could harvest food, and also um, places where they could go do hunting to get meat. And so what happened was that the strongest individual among the groups that led the population to fertile land and places where they could hunt and have meat, those emerged as the leaders, and the people, especially the males, gathered around the compound or the dwelling of this leader, and they will go do hunting expeditions together, come back to the person's compound and share what they had brought in for the day. And as they were going back, they left the remains or the skin of the animal and the tusks, like the elephants, in the compound of the leader. And the next time they came together to go hunting, this leader will take the remains of what was harvested before, cook food for them to eat before they go on hunting expeditions. These are the individuals that emerged as our traditional leaders. And with time, these leaders, they were respected and honored and taken care of almost like gods, as honorables within the society. And they had large families. So their children became the leaders that took up over from them. And that's how we had the leadership of the chiefs, where it goes by inheritance, particularly within the grassland area of Ambazonia. And so that's how the leadership emerged. And you know that each group has their ways and customs. For example, around the birth of a child, the death funeral ceremonies, when somebody's getting married, and major events. So they develop customs. So these leaders became the guardians of the customs of their individual groups, and they were even attributed with some religious authorities. They became like the religious leaders before you have major religions like Muslim or Christian faith come. And so they embody basically the spirit of each group, the traditions, as well as the beliefs, the religious beliefs of that group. And they all believed in God. That's how the leadership emerged. And the groups were wandering from place to place. The stronger groups will overcome the weaker groups and seize their land and other properties. And basically, what brought a stop to all these migrations was when the colonial masters came and they started making agreements with the leaders of these groups. Then the migrations basically came to a stop, and people now remained where they were when the colonizers came. That's how the leadership emerged.
Wow. Thank you. That is I didn't. I thought I read history, but that was a very nice insight into our how our communities and societies grew came to be and grew over time. And you explain how they were walking and settling based on their strength, based on their life, living survival in terms of getting food and meat, and they will all gather in the traditional leaders area and share what they've had for the day and leave, so and they were taken care of. Now, what are the roles, or what were the roles of these traditional leaders before 1922?
So basically, like I was saying before, the Europeans came.
Yeah.
The invaders have come in different rates. You had the Muslim that came from the north and invaded for slaves. They used to come and use, unfortunately, people who are dark skinned as cheap labor to do hard things that the others didn't want to do. So the Muslims came from the north and they took some of us as slaves. And these leaders, basically, the people that they didn't like, those are the people that they gave up and sold away as slaves and kept the ones that they liked. And then eventually, about during the slave trade, the whites came from the south in ships, and these same leaders again, they made agreements with them, and the people that they didn't like, they gave them up, and they kept the people that they liked. Those who they didn't like is who became the slaves that were sent out abroad. And so they stayed, and it depends on the goodwill of the leader. So if the leader is a good person, and knows that he's just one of everybody else in the community and just is happens to have been privileged or graced to be the leader, he respects the people and takes good care of them, and does not consider himself to be superior to them, even though they honor him and respect him. So before, when we talk about 1920s, remember that before 1920, the Europeans had come in the even 1850s, before the Conference of Berlin in 1884, when the Europeans decided to basically prevent war among them by dividing Africa among themselves. When these Europeans came, they went to each community and tried to find a leader to make an agreement with them that their land will belong to the European leaders. And actually, it's very interesting to find out that the Conference of Berlin was triggered by the land of Ambazonia. The British had come, Alfred Soker came in around 1858 and settled in what is called Limbe today, that he called Victoria, and made agreements with the local Bakore chiefs to that territory should belong to the British Crown. The Germans settled, were making agreements around Douala area with the Douala local leaders and chiefs, and it almost led to a war between the Germans and the British. And that's why they agreed that to prevent war between the European leaders scrambling for land in Africa, they need to meet and agree on the boundaries of their territories. And that's what led to the Conference of Berlin in 1884. It's very interesting. I read that. It was actually the land of Ambazonia that triggered the Conference of Berlin. So that's where they met and they had a common agreement. And the British decided to relinquish the possession of Ambazonia that they had under Afraseka to the Germans. That extended the border to what we knew it to be the original German Cameroon. And so there was no war among the European leaders. And then eventually, as you know, there was the First World War that the Germans lost in 1880, in 1918, and the conquerors, those who defeated the Germans, in this case Britain and France and Russia, even though Russia did not take land in Africa, but those colonial masters that were already established in Africa seized the possessions of the Germans as the war booty, and then they added it to their territories, and that's why um, the British wanted to take back the land that they had given to the Germans. That's why British Southern Cameroon and Northern Cameroon went back to the British, and the French had taken many parts in around Cameroon, which was Chad, Central African Republic, right down to Congo and Gabon. And so they basically took the remainder of the German portion of Cameroon that the British had not yet had control over. And so before 1922, as we were mentioning, that's what had happened. That these colonial masters were making agreement with, in this case, initially for Ambazonia, the British, and then later on with the Germans. And after the Germans were defeated in the First World War, our chiefs were now making agreements, but with the British, while the French-speaking part of Cameroon, their chiefs were making agreements, but with the French. And so that's what happened. Remember, during the time that these colonial masters arrived, that's what brought a stop to all the migrations of the groups and fighting, and stronger groups defeating weaker groups and seizing their land, and brought a freezing to where we are right now, the different groups of people.
Wow. This is so interesting. But I'm just going to go out of the subject of today. And you mentioned that Ambazonian land was one of the triggers or the catalyst for the Berlin Conference. And and I just want to ask if you can relate it to the current attitude of the rest of the world towards Amazonian plight. I mean, this is out of what we're talking about, or
I know
today. But
it's a really
I find that there's a correlation to it.
correct. It's really a very interesting topic when you read it. Truly, in fact, the Berlin Conference was compelled by the British not wanting a quarrel with the Germans over the land of Ambazonia. Like I said, the Afro-Seca had arrived in 1858 and settled in Victoria. You remember, Seca Baptist College is named after him. And he, at that time, Queen Victoria was the Queen of England. So he called that land, that capital, he called it Victoria. And so basically he and called that area Ambas Bay. So the British had initial control over that territory. The Germans were in Douala and were trying to settle there and made agreements with the with the local Douala people. And they were almost going to go to a fight over the area between around Tico there, between the French Cameroon and now British controlled Ambazonia, basically, or the former British Southern Cameroon. And that's where they, in order to avoid war, they agreed to hold a conference. And that's what led to the Berlin Conference. And in fact, it's very interesting. Not only did Ambazonia contribute to the Berlin Conference that led to the partitioning of Africa, but even the French later on, when they were going to form the Treaty of Union that compelled their French colonies to serve the interests of the French. When in 1959, the French were now imposing themselves on La République du Cameroun with Ahidjo, they were looking for ways not to lose Cameroon. And so they came up with those 6 points of how they would control the country's resources and everything, and then they extended it and imposed it on other Francophone African countries. This is a separate topic of its own that is also very interesting to read. So Cameroon has always been, or in fact, Ambazonia has always been a very interesting part of the story of Africa. And I think that there's a specific destiny concerning Ambazonia, which is why you have the conspiracy to keep them, under bondage. But eventually, that country will emerge free and be an example for the rest of the African countries. In fact, if you go into it, Ambazonia was the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to emerge as an independent nation when our forefathers decided to separate themselves from Nigeria in 1954 and started self-rule in Boya and exchanged governments between Ndele and Foncha before they came back and compelled them to decide whether to join Nigeria or La République du Cameroun. So Ambazonia is a unique territory that has a very unique history, which we don't want to go into that right now. Maybe it will be a different topic for another time. We're focusing on the chiefs and how La République is trying to misuse them and abuse them to keep these people again under bondage, but the people will be free. Lady Casey, I was waiting for Lady Casey. But anyway, so going back to the situation of the chiefs, when the colonialists came, the Germans did theirs, and they fought wars against our people. They had a different way of administration. So the Germans tried to settle in Boya. They tried to introduce the farms that you know about, the CDC, the rubber, the plantain, and all the others. They did not get hard workers, so they decided to go into the inner land. And so when they approached the hardworking people within the Bamenda area, they befriended the Bali people to collaborate with them. The other people were hostile, resisting the control of the Germans. And so you need to read the Mancon Bafut wars against the Germans. There were one or two of those wars that took place, to the point where the Mancon Palace was burned and things happened in Bafut as well. But anyway, the Germans were not as nice as we would think. They were hard. And so that led to the wars. Then they reached out to Fumban, and you can read the story of that. But after the Germans lost and the British came, then the British had a different system of administration working with the chiefs, which was indirect rule. So if you read the history, there was no war between any of our local chiefs against the British, but there was war against the Germans. Like in the Bamenda zone, the Mankon Bafut fought against the Germans and the Balis collaborated with them. You go to Bamum Lam, the Bamums also fought against the Germans. But that did not happen during the British time. There's another story for that, which we can explain what our chiefs did during that time.
Wow. Thank you, thank you. I just brought that, that distraction to the topic of today, just because, you know, like you have, well articulated. Ambazonia is a very sensitive territory, and it's only really sad that most Ambazonians don't realize how powerful our territory is. Like you said, it will certainly be free, and it will be a great example for the rest of nations in Africa, because
Mhm.
that part of our history between 1954 and 1961 is a very interesting part of our history, and we've talked about it on this program. Um, the chronology of events during that period. We've talked about it on it from a different angle, but this angle today, I think we'll find the time to have more depth conversation about it. So when you know your history, you know your roots, you know yourself, and you'll be able to face the future with courage and boldness. And
Mhm.
thank you so much. And now, you've well explained how our evolution or our society or the leadership or traditional leadership stopped moving from place to place. They settled as we had the impact and influence of Western countries. And, we know what set of countries are referred to as Western countries, Europe and America in this at this point. So, we started, I'll say, the struggle for our independence started as soon as Foncha realized he has been duped by Aijo. He has just been, have conned him into something. But it was slow. It was, we're trying the intellectual, the civilized way. We try all the diplomatic and, using the laws, the international law, all this period of time until multipartism, when we thought is some hope in the early 90s for Ambazonia. We thought it's a hope for Ambazonia to try and live with some degree of freedom and dignity, but that also didn't work. And until we in 2017, where the people of Ambazonia arose, they came out and they stand and stood for their independence and their freedom. We remember September 22nd, how they flood the streets of Ambazonia, chanting and singing our anthem, crying for the gods to hear our cry that we have lived in bondage for decades. Up until now, you know, I'm focusing on the traditional rulers. What do you think their role, or how have they functioned or impact or contribute, from
Correct.
2017, when the people of Ambazonia said they want their freedom, they want their liberty, they want to live in their own land and territory with dignity, and they want their independence. What do you think the chiefs and fonds have
Correct.
acted during this period?
So basically, when the Europeans came, they came to get our things. The Industrial Revolution started in Europe. They needed raw materials, and they went to Africa for raw materials as well as market to sell their goods. That is the reason why they interact with Africa. They do not come to Africa because they love the people. They want the things that are in Africa. So as they came to Africa, they tried to transform the people, change their culture to think and act like them and serve their interest. That has always been and is what they will always do until we realize that we are strong enough to stand by ourselves. So, in the time of the Germans, before they were defeated during the Second World War. They they took the chiefs of Douala and sent them to Germany for training. You read books about Mangabell, who went to Germany and lived there and studied there, and you can see how he was dressed like a German. And he came back. Those were the earlier African chiefs that had been Europeanized. But most of our other traditional rulers, like I said, they resisted this influx of foreign ideology. That's why you had the wars against the Germans. Now, when the British came, it was different. The British did not really want wars. You know that the British were controlling a lot of territory. They were in India, they were even in China, all across the world. In fact, they say that the sun rose over the British Empire and set over the British Empire. And they did not have a lot of people. I don't think they were willing to engage in any serious wars. So the British had a concept of indirect rule. What that means is that if the traditional rulers understood that the British were now in charge, they let them do whatever they wanted to do in their own property or their own land or their territory, as long as they were collecting taxes and giving it to the British. And you know how it is with our local tradition. Most of those chiefs, they had sons, and as the sons grew and became adults and the father died, they spread out, and each of the sons carried their own group of people and became local chiefs wherever they went. You can narrate a long story there about, like, the Bamli case, for example. The leader of the Bamli case in Tikaland, after he died, there were so many sons. The first son is who went to Bafusam and became the founder of Bafusam. And the last of them is who became the founder of Fumban. It's a long story, but I will not go into that right now. And the other sons developed the different tribes within Bamileke land, and some of them actually moved into the northwest region, as we call it today, who are in the plains and other areas. For example, the tribe of Banso, the sister of the son or the leader of Fumban, is who formed the tribe that is in Banso and all the other groups. But whatever the case, as the Europeans came and then they made a stop to the mobilization of our groups, our people tried to resist initially the Germans, and later on discovered that the Europeans had superior weapons of warfare, because, like, when they came to the Mankon Bafur wars, they came with guns. They used it and killed our people and burnt the palace. And so, you had to find a way to survive. And so that's how they have to now realize that they have to interact with these invaders. And so after the Germans left, our people discovered that they have to talk with the new European leaders. And the British had the concept that as long as you recognize us as the new colonizing masters of your land, will let you do your own thing. And among our people, they respected family hierarchy. So among the chiefs, they knew who was the leading chief among all the other chiefs. So, like, if you come around the Bamenda grass field, the Babanke chief was considered to be superior to the Bafu chief, just based on family lineage. And so they would elevate based on family lineage and respect the chief they consider to be superior, and the other chiefs will be subservient to that, and that person will be the one that will be interacting with the colonial masters indirectly, and they will pay their tax dues to that leading superior paramount chief, who will now take it to the British. But then, as time went on, as they were educating our people, you had now a group of non traditional leaders, children, who had gone to school and knew the customs of the colonizing masters. And most of these were like church leaders' children, like, say, Foncha. His father was a catechist in the Catholic Church. And if you take Muna, all of those, they were children of some of the chiefs that the chiefs donated to go to school and learn the customs of the colonizing masters. So Muna actually is from Bengui, but he was offered to go to school by the Fono Valley. It's very interesting. And so he went to school. Foncha, they went to school, and the first graduates became teachers. And that's why you see that most of our leaders, they were primary school teachers or headmasters. Like Foncha was headmaster of Big Mancon. Mona himself was also teaching. And so now you have a situation where the colonizing masters were either discussing with uneducated traditional leaders, or now talking with some of the children of these conquered African territories who had gone to schools and learned European language and customs. And so you had a dichotomy that who will lead? The fathers, who were the traditional leaders, wanted to be leaders out of respect and customs and traditions over the centuries. But these new leaders, the Europeans could communicate with them. So they were trying to put the two together, where they use the youths they have trained who speak their language, but at the same time, the youths wanted to respect the traditional authorities who were not themselves educated. And so if you can read in some documents how they had a situation where the colonizing masters were deciding, should we use the newly educated young people who have learned the British language or traditions, or should we use the traditional leaders? And they went back and forth. And once in a while, the British didn't want to use the traditional leaders and only wanted the youths, but they also realized that without the traditional rulers, they would not have a headway. So they started coming up with chiefs conferences where they put the chiefs together in a group and then try to talk to them. And so the traditional authorities have always played a role with the colonizing masters. And then they would work with the DO. You know, the district officer was who the colonizing officers used as a local authority from their homeland in Europe. And they would now collaborate with the traditional authorities on how to administer the land. So they became what they call the auxiliaries of the administration. The traditional authorities became auxiliaries of the administration.
Wow, based on what you have just explained, how has these colonial, I would say, doctrines and teachings affected how, the way our chiefs and fonds have behaved during our recent uprising, our recent rise in our liberation fight from
Correct.
2017?
So basically, you realize that the Europeans came for our things. They wanted to
Mhm.
control us to extract the resources of the land. And they were compelled to grant independence. That means let people who look like the indigents rule. So it will not be a white man ruling, but it will be a local who looks like us. So what they did was they picked from among those elites that I talked about, those who had been educated to speak their languages. They chose leaders to rule the local colonies, and they seem to have retreated or given what they would call independence. But actually, what they did was they chose people who look like us, who will rule in their interest so they continue exploiting the resources of the land. Now, so if you go and look, the French did what you call the 6 point agreement to control the territories and all the resources. The British did it indirectly. You always hear about indirect rule. They wanted to keep the colonies under British control, economically controlled by the British. And so the situation of Ambazonia or the former British Southern Cameroon and Northern Cameroon came into play here because the British had Nigeria and they wanted the former British Southern Cameroon and the former British Northern Cameroons to remain under British influence. And so, but you know that our forefathers had already broken away in 1954 and started their own union. So that's why the British told them, they said, you either agree to remain with Nigeria, which will still remain economically under the British, or you agree to join the French. And in this case, the British had made an agreement with the French behind the scenes that the French would recompensate them for their economic investments in Ambazonia. And that happened so that when they realized that our people would vote in the majority to join French Cameroon, money exchanged hands, which was £2 million, paying the British off for what their investments were in British Southern Cameroon, then the French will consider us as having belonged to them. With Northern Cameroons, the British, they knew that the people vote homogeneously. They don't talk a lot and argue whatever the leader says they do. So they gave the traditional authorities a Land Rover and £100 to have their citizens, indigents, vote to stay with Nigeria, which what happened. So the British Northern Cameroons voted unanimously in the plebiscite to stay with Nigeria. And it was because they got that money, which you can call a bribe. But with the British Southern Cameroon, you had differences of opinion and discussions, which we have been practicing since 1954. Endele had his thoughts, Foncha had his thoughts, and people exchanged ideas back and forth. And if Foncha carried the day, and so that money that I mentioned exchanged hands between the British and the French. And so British Southern Cameroon was now handed over to the French. And Charles de Gaulle said, when we voted to join them, that British Southern Cameroon was a gift from the Queen of England, the one who just died recently, because she became queen in 1953. So she knows exactly what truly happened. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that the colonialists wanted to keep our people and our land and our territory and resources under their control. So they put people in authority who will serve their interest. In fact, you can call them puppets. So, which is what has happened if you focus mainly on Cameroon, with Ahijo being serving the interests of the French and Biya coming and continuing the same. The Francophones, in this case, have turned around to do the same with our traditional authorities. That means you saw, I mentioned before that when the Germans came, our chiefs, some of them fought against the Germans. They did not want these foreign whites coming to control them or invade their territory. They fought against them, and you had those wars. And now they had been pacified. And so now what they were made to become auxiliaries of the administration. That means to collaborate with the local white authorities. And so when we went into independence, they have turned now to also make the traditional authorities to collaborate with the puppet regime to serve the interests of the whites. So now the traditional authorities are no longer, in many respects, defending the interest of their indigents in the land like good leaders would do. They now consider themselves but auxiliaries of the administration and serving the interest of, say, the government of Yaoundé, which is basically a puppet of France. And that's what has happened, that our traditional authorities have been co-opted, and they are now serving the government rather than the interest of their indigents that they are supposed to be leaders of.
Wow. Knowledge is power. I mean, we've seen this play out on so many levels. We've seen how some of the um chiefs and funds have been the one calling on the military to come and destroy the so-called Ambazonian fighters. We've seen how a lot of them left their duties and went to stay in Yaoundé when they could not handle the heat of our freedom quest. And we've seen how all of these have played out and how they have been reduced to puppets, like you said. I mean, they have been used and used. And in recently we see La Republic minister is being part of installing a chief, in Ambazonia. And from my understanding, our customs is usually done by a certain group of people who will now ordain the next chief who or fund who is taking over leadership, and it was passed down from the family to is within a certain family, and it wasn't something as politicized as it is now. Why do you think that is?
Correct. It's just to serve again the interest of La Republique. The colonizing masters, while they were still in the land, if they did not like a chief because he would not do what they want, they killed him. If you read, you will hear that the son of Bafut was banished to Douala, and then he came back later. There were some of them that were almost killed. So indirectly, if you serve the interest of the colonizing masters, they will allow you reign, which led to the Sultan of Fumban compromising when the French were there and made agreement. That's why Fumban has a good relationship with the French, and to the point where the Sultan of Fumban, who just died, actually was trained in Paris and became the first minister in 1958 under French government before La République got its independence. The Sultan of Fumban, who just died, he was trained in France and also in Senegal, and he became a minister because Fumban stopped fighting the Germans and decided to befriend the French, and so the children were privileged, and they have a good relationship there. So basically, these chiefs, if they are willing to serve the interest of the colonizing masters as puppets, they allow them to survive, and they were giving them money like stipends. So you can read how some of them even asked that, okay, now that we are now working besides collecting taxes and giving it to the colonizing masters, what are our stipends? And that has extended to the point where now like Yaoundé actually pays chiefs for first class chiefs. They give them like 300,000 francs a month, which is like a salary. And then second class chiefs are given like, I think it's like 250 or 200. And then third class chiefs are given like 150,000, which is almost nothing. So they look up to that. And the people who come to give them that money are the DOs. So the DO comes monthly to the local traditional authority to hand him that pay from Yaoundé. The money doesn't even need to come from Yaoundé. They can collect it as bribes on the streets. But that way they keep you under control. So they call the DOs chef de terre, which means he's the chief of the territory. So the chiefs have become subservient and they're now under them. So basically, the chiefs have been converted to puppets. And so any chief that does not do what the administering authority in Yaoundé wants, they remove them. And so what they did was they have conglomerated all of them into an association of traditional authorities in Cameroon. They put all of them, whether they are Muslims in the north or individuals in Bia's region there, or our paramount chiefs that we know that we respected and held in high esteem. They have put them all into one association where they hold meetings, indoctrinate them. Basically, the one purpose is to make them serve Yaoundé and not their people. And that's why the chiefs have been indoctrinated and they don't serve the interest of the people. They even go around pointing the homes of their citizens for the military to kill.
Oh, so sad. Wow. So now, as Ambazonians, I just want to take this puppet nature of our chiefs to to relate it to our people, because our people are listening, and excuse me, and we've been fighting for so long, and we now we with this detailed explanation, we have a better understanding on how La Republique have been using them to ensure that we remain oppressed, we remain under the French barbaric rule, and they have been using this our leaders. How should our people, conduct themselves? Excuse me.
Correct.
Hang
So
on.
the people, first of all, need to know what has truly happened and what is actually happening. Because the so called traditional leaders, very, very, very few of them, and if you can count, it will just be on your fingers, really care to truly stand and defend the interest of their people. I don't mean the land, I mean the indigenous people of the land. They are defending their land because they give them privileges to own land and work farms with their families. But they do not truly stand to defend the interest of their citizens. And these are the people from whom their families emerged as leaders. They have been transformed and they no longer serve them. They need to know that. That's why they will not be surprised to realize that La Republique is using them to betray them, to point out their families for them to be killed, or
Mhm.
things like that. Or when they go and present a complaint, it's like the man has a deaf ear, he's not hearing what you're saying. They have been bought off. Very, very few of them truly care about the people. Um, I'm sorry to say that, but that is the fact.
But I mean, some of our people have idolized these chiefs and fawns and have played into their hands several times, or into fall into their trap several times. Now, how do we drive this home for them to understand that these people are not there for their interest? They are not there to protect or promote even neither the culture we are trying to hold on to, which have La Republic have also used to try and control our people and put majority of these societies who idolizes these chiefs and funds to also
Mhm.
put them in a place where they can control and influence their choices and decision and even attitude towards our liberation cause.
Correct. So when the people know this, if you know that somebody doesn't like you and wants to kill you, then you know how to handle yourself. I'm not saying that they should be rising up to go and fight against the palaces and things like that, but you need to know whether your chief truly cares about you as a citizen in the village? Is it somebody who truly loves you and acknowledges you and respects you as a citizen under his administration? Or is it somebody who takes advantage of you? There are some of them, when major figures die, they go and seize the land of the widows and the orphans and give it to their children and displace them that they can go anywhere else. So you need to know that, because if you know that somebody doesn't really care about you, then you know how to protect yourself. But besides that, the influence of these chiefs will continue to diminish as time goes on, especially in the big metropolitan areas. If you go to places like Douala and Yaoundé, you realize that you hardly see what you call chiefs or big palaces, because the big cities has grown and they have been diminished to insignificant figures. You may only hear about somebody being mentioned as a chief of a small area, which is like a quarter or a neighborhood. And then also you come to our big towns like in Bamenda, and you realize that the chiefs are not as big as when you go to very rural areas where you don't have a lot of citizens. Those chiefs seem to have a lot of power over there. But as the population increases, the influence of the chiefs will also diminish. The chiefs that will survive will be those who truly have the interest of the people at heart and are fighting for the welfare of the people. You know who are good leaders. A good leader is somebody who really cares about your welfare. He knows that he is just one of you like everybody else, because they die. That's why they die. They die because they're not different from everybody else. So they respect you. They know that it is a privilege to be a leader. They are there to serve you and to take good care of you. Those ones will survive. But the ones that have literally abandoned that responsibility of leadership, and they're only self-centered, and those are the kinds that have run them, and they live in Yaoundé. They still call themselves chiefs. They cannot even dare enter their villages, and they go and live in Yaoundé, and call themselves chiefs over there. They can't dare go back to the village. Those ones have radically abdicated their responsibilities and basically disqualified themselves as chiefs any longer. As time goes on, like I said, if you take the situation of French Cameroon that is controlled by the French, you realize that all across Africa, the French are losing their control. It's not just in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, but even right now, was speaking in Senegal. The Senegalese are angry with French influence. They're burning French infrastructures and asking the French to leave. It's going to progress all across Africa, even to countries like Ivory Coast, Chad, right down to Cameroon. And when the French have lost full control and the Africans have gained their sovereignty, regained their self-confidence, and they're now doing things in their interest, that French influence will go. These puppets that were serving the French will also disappear, and the countries will be free. That's what's going to happen. It is inevitable. It's just a matter of time. Even a French parliamentarian, there's a video going around where he's in front of the French parliament, was decrying how France has lost control over Africa. And he even predicted that there's a coup d'etat just waiting to happen in Cameroon. That was a French talking, it's not me, in the French parliament. So the French know that they have lost Africa. And so as they go and lose control, our people will emerge sovereign. And these traditional rulers that are following basically the puppet regime in Yaoundé and the French, they will lose their control because the people will reject them.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. As for the French Cameroon and freeing themselves from France, don't those people, they are not serious. So they are not serious set of people. So if every French country is liberating, if every francophone country is liberating themselves from France, and still a republic will be the last, if not one of the last, because of the way they are. But anyway, now some people believe that these our funds and chiefs, and these are we're focusing on the ones in Ambazonia, because they have been such an integral part of our society. And I also mentioned earlier how most people still idolize and still cherish the custom of having traditional rulers who we now know don't serve the interest of the indigenes. But some people still believe that what they need is restructuring or redefining their roles and responsibilities. Do you think that would change the status quo of them being a political puppet, of keeping our
Yes,
people in
eventually new
bondage?
leaders will emerge, and I don't want to say what they will be called because the people know who are good leaders and they know who
Mhm.
are bad leaders. And the people will go after the good leaders and they will reject the bad leaders. That is basically how it's going to be. When somebody is bad and does not lead well, it leads to war. There's war in Ambazonia against La Republic because Bia is bad. If Bia was good, there would not have been any war. So with time, the good ones among them that really care about the people will survive longer. But I don't think that in 100 or 200 years from now, you will still be talking about traditional rulers. You will not have them. They are losing their grip and their role that they are playing, and eventually they will no longer be. I don't know whether people will be electing leaders like you hear about a democracy, like whether you call them mayor or whatever you call them. But what they need are good leaders emerging who have vision and guide the people for their welfare and do things to serve the interest of the people. The people can tell who that is. They can smell it, whether you are not self-centered. These people are not different from others. That's why they die, that's why they get sick, that's why their life is limited. It's just that they were being given preferential honor and being regarded as almost semi-gods, and that called like honorable titles, people bowing down clapping to them and things like that. But they die, they hardly live 100 years, just like anybody else, just like our grandmothers in the villages. So they are not different. But if they were good and they are working hard for every person, knowing that I'm one of you, I'm not better than you, we are all in this together, the people will honor them. And such leaders, when they die, the whole community mourns that a good person has passed on. While when a bad person dies, the people rather rejoice that that wicked person has finally gone. So what I'm saying is that the traditional leaders are not different from you and I. They are like any other human being that God has created. And just like people die, they also die. And the good ones among them who truly care about their local communities and take good care of them as equals and protect their interest and not taking advantage of them, they will live longer. But the ones that um, pride themselves, think that they are better than and different and more honorable because maybe they got a Mercedes from Yaoundé or they're driving things like, they will eventually lose that authority and they will no longer be in power. If you look at metropolitan areas, foreigners are coming in, non-indigents are coming and buying the land and building. So what, not only in Yaoundé and Douala, you go to Bamenda, most of the people who are building big infrastructures are not indigenous of the original local villages. And those people don't care about the palace. The people who care about the palace are the local children of the indigents who founded the place. And this, as the population increases and the city gets bigger and bigger, the chiefs will lose their value except if they start working truly for the welfare and interest of their people.
Mm. Thank you. So as we conclude and prepare, as we prepare to conclude and round up on this topic for today and also the program, I just want us to now bring it to the present and how Amazonians will need to deal and relate to these chiefs going forward. I know you have mentioned several times during your explanations that we should be aware to know that these people are puppets and they are being used to keep us in bondage. They are being used to control, influence, and manipulate the state of our communities and societies so that we will not be able to grow to the extent to attain our freedoms. And they are also being used to kill and maim and you know, our people. And there have been a breach. They have created a breach with La Republique to access our people, even in areas where they will not or never will never be able to access, to create chaos and destruction because that's all they can do. And you've already explained all of these things. But now, as freedom fighters, we are in the phase of fighting for our freedom, and we are fighting with every everything and we are using any means possible because our freedom must come to pass. Now, how in particularly should our people at home front deal with these chiefs funds going forward? How should they handle them? How should they
So
deal with them as we
I
do
would not speak
fight?
like some radical members who were trying to discredit the children of Ambazonia, the honest children of Ambazonia, who say the chief should be killed or their heads cut off. I would not speak like that. I don't think that you should be aggressive towards them. You should not go and attack them. You should not go and burn the palaces. But you should really make them know that you are not serving us. You are not doing what we expected you to do to serve our village. You are rather serving yourself and the regime in Yaoundé. They should let them know that that's what the people know. And if they do not change, don't pay attention to them. Let them live in their palaces and do whatever they're doing. But like I said, they will lose it because the Biya regime is a dying regime. It's not just because Biya is 91 years old and is going to die soon if they declare him dead, because the French are used to hiding the death of their puppets. When Hufet Bonye in Ivory Coast died, the French hid the information for 7 months. When Eyadema in Togo died, the French hid the information for 5 months. And when Omar Bongo in Gabon died, the French hid the information for 3 months. So Biya can die, and they'll hide the information and keep him in the fridge for as long as they want to until they have secured what they think is a more secure government before they'll announce that he's dead. But whatever the case, Biya is going, and his government is going. But besides that, the French are also losing their grip on the continent of Africa. If you look at the French, they have lost their territories all around the world. They used to be in North America here. And because of the Anglo-French wars, they sold their territories to the American colonies and left North America. The remaining foothold they had was in Quebec, which is a province in Canada. And then other territories they had in Asia, they lost all of them. And they remained, even Algeria, that the French wanted to co-opt to be a part of France, they lost. So the only place where the French have a little stronghold, a foothold, is in sub-Saharan Africa. And as you see happening, like I mentioned, in countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the French are already losing their grip. And so with time, they are going to lose it. The projection is that you see the population of the world that is changing. The population of the Caucasian, and I'm not saying this like there's some pride in me saying this, the Caucasian population of Europe is diminishing, just the same as in North America. But the populations of the other parts of the world are increasing because of birth rates. So the projection is that by 2100, this is, you can go and Google it, you will see it. Almost every second human being on planet Earth is going to be a flat-nosed African like myself, sub-Saharan Africa. Almost every second human being on Earth. Right now, before, China was the most populated nation on Earth. And then right now, India overtook China in 2022, which I'm not sure many people became aware of. India is now the most populated nation on Earth. But as the populations change, Africa is taking off. And by 2100, almost every second human being on planet Earth is going to be an African, which is one of the reasons why the Caucasian guys who control the world are doing everything to reduce the population in Africa by promoting family planning and homosexuality and all kinds of things that reduce birth rates. But in spite of that, they will not succeed. So as the population demographically changes, the Caucasian population will lose control. They will not be able to rule us like they are doing. And Africa will emerge. And mega cities will emerge in Africa, not just Lagos. All the big cities will become extremely very large and they will be gone. And these puppets that are being used by them will also be gone. And the question is going to be, what kind of leaders are we going to have in Africa? We need better, good leaders that have a vision for the continent, for the welfare of the people, and have good plans to develop Africa. And that is happening sooner and faster than people are thinking.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. It's been such an educational session, and looking at this aspect of our society, the traditional leaders that we've had over time, and you've touched on the history, the prehistory, the colonial period, and also currently what they are up to and how we should deal with it. And I just hope that our viewers have learned something today and they take something to understand, because it also, besides everything that I've said, it also brings to light the depth of awareness that we should be aware of who we are, because it touched on part of the journey of the evolution of our societies and communities. And if we know these things, we will not allow the West nor the French to put us to be fighting each other, to be creating confusion, to be hating our brother or sister, because these things were deliberately created so that we could be easily divided, distracted, and controlled. So, for our own greater good and survival, we need to understand that our uniqueness, our differences, and how our society have come to be, and why we can only strive or be intentional about making it better. I just
Mhm.
thank our viewers. And just before we close for the day today and round up the program, Dr. Lobati, I'll just like you to round up, what you have to say and anything else you'd like to tell our viewers and fellow Ambazonians who are staying the course.
Correct. So you realize that La Republic has gone to the point where they're now the ones choosing traditional leaders, and if they don't like you, they kill you. And they have reached a point where even in the local villages, they choose people who are not local indigens. So you go to some areas that are choosing like people from La Republic and make them local chiefs. Now, if you go recently, one of my classmates at Tanganji, who is the so-called Minister of Territorial Administration, he recently signed a decree appointing the chief of Njinibi, elevating his rank from third class chief to second class chief, and then calling Njinibi a subdivision. Now, this is very interesting for us to realize that um, he's so uneducated. He's supposed to be the minister of territorial administration and should know about all the administrative units. Njinibi is just a small village in Mbengwe subdivision. Momo division has five main divisions. You have Andek, Batibo, Mbengwi, Njikwa, and Widikum. Njinibi is not a subdivision administratively. Even the puppet bear has not yet designated Njinibi a subdivision. But you hear him come and call the sub chief, the small chief in Njinibi, that he's a second class chief elevated to a subdivision. Basically, this was meant to flatter that guy. So they come and flatter our traditional authorities that they are elevating you from a third class chief earning $150,000 to a second class chief who may earn 200 to 250,000 francs, sorry, francs. And then they make you feel big. And that will basically cause jealousy from the surrounding chiefs to think that who are you to be bigger than us and rule us, which is just the infighting that they are doing. And basically, La Republic is doing this to control the chiefs, to control our people, to continue extorting from us. But like I said, people should not be worried. They don't even know what they're doing, because even if the Minister of Territorial Administration does not know his administrative units and is naming a place higher than his boss, the president has designated to be an administrative unit, you know that they don't even know what they're doing. They're acting in confusion because their goal is just to control the place, to extract the resources. They don't really care about the people. Like I was telling our people, don't be angry with them, the chiefs. Don't go and fight them. Don't do something bad to them. Arm yourself with information. Know exactly who they are and let them know that we know who they are and whether they have been bought off and that they are serving the interests of La Republique. They themselves will run to Yaoundé or go and hide somewhere else. They themselves will basically disqualify themselves by their actions, and become irrelevant with time. That's what I would say right now. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, I cannot say how much I've learned in this. I'll keep repeating that because it's been such an enlightening moment to share this program with you. And I want to take this hour to really thank you, Dr. Lobati, for always creating the time, whether it's 2 minutes to the show or 1 hour to the show or one day to the show. You are always ready to give us insight, knowledge, articulating on subject matter with excellence, and I truly appreciate you for that. And I also want to take this opportunity once again, thanking our viewers for always joining our show, watching and sharing, and thank all our restoration fighters. 21 gun salute for keeping it up to keep the hope alive, and all our freedom fighters globally. I salute you all. And Ambazonia must be free. And here on the horizon, the voice of the Amber woman, we are staying the course. Thank you for joining. Bye for now.
Mama, you're kind. Mama, you're beautiful. Mama, you're good. Mama, you're wonderful. No woman like you, Mama. No woman like you, Mama. Thank God for you, Mama. Thank God for you, Mama. 'Cause you gave me life, oh Mama. Queen of my life, oh Mama. I go love you for life, oh Mama. 'Cause you love me so, oh Mama. From small begin, I never forget all the suffer when you suffer for me. Oh yeah, yeah. All the pain and the troubles where I put you through. I remember when money no be there and chop no be there for her. You be the try your best. You go run around to find us something where we go chop. When I dey sick, you know the sleep. You go dey cry all night. You go hold me tight, start to pray, say God make you have my oh Lord. Ooh, I wo yeah yeah chama. Afunga na bere yeah funga chama. Ambama na bere yeah ambama chama. Ega na chinum yeah ga chama. Mama, I wo yeah yeah chama. Afunga na bere yeah funga chama. Ambama na bere yeah ambama chama. Ega na chinum yeah ga chama. Ega chama mama. Ega na chinum yeah ga chama. Chinum yeah ga chama. Oh, you gave me life, oh Mama. Queen of my life, oh Mama. I go love you for life, oh Mama. 'Cause you love me so, oh Mama. Hey, hey, are you there? Bina, no one there. Ale mama, danselelelele. Ale mama, selelelele. Ale mama, shekelelelele. Ale mama, you're my motivation. You gave me the best education, mama. The song where I sing, I'm for you. Now it's special dedication to you. Oh yeah, I know say every night and day you pray say make a mama. The God where you the pray, I'm for heaven. Don't give me this inspiration, mama. The song where I sing, I'm for you. Now to show my appreciation to you. Be a warrior, chama. I funga na bere ya funga chama. I'm bombing na bere ya bomba chama.